That's clear. Not changing your name.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Bullish on Business. And do we have a treat for you today? We're diving into the groundbreaking movement in women's health with two extraordinary leaders who are changing the way women experience the second half of their life. First, we have Dr. True, an IFM certified functional medicine physician and founder and clinical director of Conscious Medicine, a regenerative and holistic medical practice that's redefining what's possible for women in midlife and beyond. Hi, Dr. True.
Hi, Rose. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, and I'm so happy that you're here. Well, Dr. True is known for her mastery of the gut-brain hormone connection, her regenerative therapies, and her ability to get to the real root cause, not just a masked symptoms. She's the creator of the conscious medicine method, and she's on a mission to help women reverse chronic issues, optimize hormones, and rejuvenate from the inside out. Also, joining her and me today is my good friend Mary Pate, the COO of Conscious Medicine and the powerhouse behind the SheSHIFTS Executive Health Initiative. Hi, Mary.
Hello.
Hi,
Thank you for
welcome
having me. I'm
back.
so glad to be here.
I love it. I'm so happy you're back. And if you guys are avid watchers, you'll notice and you'll remember that Mary was on with us about a year ago
I
talking
was.
about menopause and those kind of things. But she has started working and has been working with Dr. True for over a year now, I think.
Right.
And so
Yeah, we
I'm
were just
very
trying to decide
excited
that last night. Yeah.
yeah, I thought so, to see how they come together. Well, let's talk more here. So Mary, she is now the COO of Conscious Medicine and the powerhouse, as I said, behind She Shifts. Mary brings a fascinating combination of business leadership, legal expertise, and integrative nutrition coaching to the table. So she's certified in hormone and menopause coaching, and she's deeply committed to helping women stop just surviving and finally start thriving, especially in the last third of their lives. Well, together, they've built She Shifts, a concierge level program designed to help women take control of their health with advanced diagnostics, hormone management, nutrition, and lifestyle coaching, fitness support, image coaching, community, and highly personalized medical care. This isn't another program, believe me. This is a complete ecosystem created to replace the endless doctor to doctor maze women are trapped in. So, if you're ready to understand what true transformation looks like from the root cause out, stick with us. This conversation is going to change the way you think about women's health, aging, energy, and what's really possible. So before we get started into all this goodies, all this good stuff I just mentioned, I want the people that are watching, our audience, who are very interested and attentive to anything have to do with women's health, let's get to know you guys as a human, as an individual. So, Dr. True, what makes you tick?
Hmm. I would say dumb, stupid things that should not be happening. And I only say that because I had a conversation about it with my husband. And, but one of the things I do a lot is personal development and personal transformation work. And, when you discover things that you make people at fault for, or you find faults in people, like those are things that I look at to see, like, where can I generate more compassion? Where
Mm,
can I look at myself and really see, like, why do I get ticked off by stupidity? Well, part of that is because I grew up thinking I'm not smart enough,
mm,
and part of my defense mechanism to make it in the world is I gotta be smart. Because growing up, I thought I was ugly. I was told I had bug eyes. I was told that I was fat, like growing up in a Asian culture, I was a little chubby, but I was not fat. But like your aunts and uncles, every time they see you, they're like, "Oh, you're so cute. You're looking like a young lady, but you could lose 5, maybe 10 pounds." So there was a lot of like just low self-esteem things that I had to deal with when I was little. And then so in school, I figured, well, I can't be pretty. So, well, let me be smart. So I put a lot of work into doing like being a really good student. And I love learning. So I think in general, it just kind of fit my personality. And so I created this persona that I'm gonna be the smart girl in the group instead of the pretty one. But that's
Well,
that's why, yes.
Well, good thing you got both.
Who doesn't feel like they're not enough? And thank you for being so vulnerable and being honest with us. And I think you're absolutely gorgeous. So
Oh, thank you.
there. All right. So let's go over to Mary. Hey, Mary, what makes you tick?
What makes me tick? Gosh, what makes me tick? Just continuously learning. I think a little bit like Dr. True. My husband always laughs at me a little bit because I rarely read a book for pleasure. I'm always reading a book about self-improvement or about nutrition or something having to do with health. And he thinks that's really funny because he likes to read for, just enjoyment. But I do too. But I like to be constantly learning. And I think that's sort of set the progression of my life is that I like doing something for a while. I was an attorney for 33 years and I thought that was a great profession and enjoyed it very much. And one of the things I liked about it was every case was different. So I was constantly learning new things. One of the cases I often tell people about is it was a case regarding a snowplow that hit a manhole cover and the person was injured. And I learned more about how they install manhole covers in roads than anybody ever wants to know. But it's just that constant learning that really makes me tick. I like to learn new things. I like to be up on what's happening. And it's part of the reason I started into nutrition as well. I just wanted to know. I want to know what makes people healthy. I want to know why people aren't healthy. And so I would just say just constant learning and finding out new things is what makes me tick.
Well, with both of you, what a powerhouse. What a great combination. Okay, let's get into the thick of this. We're going to start with Mary. Mary, and then of course, Dr. True, when she's done, please add your 2 cents worth. Also, Mary, feel free. There's no rules. This podcast is for free flowing, but we're going to start with Mary. And what moment or realization inspired you to say women deserve something as radically better than the traditional healthcare system? And how did that spark the creation of SheSHIFTS?
I think when I was practicing law, I started into menopause. Like I said, I practiced law for 33 years and I was probably in my early to mid 50s and really started, I first started having hot flashes and knew that that was a sign of perimenopause and menopause. But then when I started really experiencing brain fog and memory lapses and feeling like I had to create all these elaborate lists and things so I wasn't forgetting anything or dropping deadlines or things like that. And when I talked to my doctor about that and sort of what I was experiencing and how I was feeling, I had a lot of fatigue, I had a lot of body aches, and I really didn't get any answers. I got answers like, well, that's part of menopause, you're just going to have that, and that's part of aging, that's the way it goes. And I really didn't like that answer. And so I started reading, I started looking into things, I started learning more. And I had already had an interest in nutrition for a number of years and really had been looking into that and started getting some training in nutrition to be a health coach. But I really felt like there had to be some better answers from doctors than this is just the way it is and this is part of menopause. So as I started looking into that more and became certified in hormone health and menopause, and then I met Dr. True, and we started working together. I really realized that when you're working with a functional medicine doctor, it's so much different than, unfortunately, what you get from most of the physicians in general out in the medical practice. and that there really is a different way, that there's a way to get to the root cause of why you're feeling the way you're feeling. And it doesn't have to be, oh, it's just menopause and you have to suck it up and be that way. So that
Wow.
was really what caused me to say, okay, let's figure this out and let's come up with some kind of a program that really will help women feel better and not just feel like they have to live with how they're feeling.
So let's switch over to Dr. True. What was your spark of the creation of She Shifts and conscious medicine?
Well, for me, it's really I actually struggled with a lot of health issues because going through medical school, I really had horrible lifestyle. I was eating out every day. I really was staying up all the time. And then there was a time I had to live in New York for my rotation. And I think during that time, I was eating so poorly because the food around me was so bad and I was enjoying too much food, I would say. I was going out. I would drink alcohol, but I was seeing that I was changing and then I started bleeding very heavily.
Mm.
And there were months where I was bleeding for months at a time and I was severely anemic. And then I started residency. And then I went in. So everything I had studied up to that point was like, okay, so you have fibroids. Had all my workup done. I had fibroids and they said, well, you just have to take out your uterus. And I was like, well, I want to have children. And they were like, no, you have such horrible, like you had over 50 tiny fibroids in your uterus. And because they're so small, that they were like, you just have to take it out. And I was like, well, let me do some research. And when I researched, I saw what I was taught and it aligned with what the doctors were telling me. So I thought, okay, well, maybe this is the way, right? So, but I said I opted for a myomectomy, which is where they go in and just remove the fibroids. And then after the surgery, it went way longer. There were complications. And then they told me that you're going to have to take this out and that's it. And I was like, no, I need to have children before I take my uterus out. So I had more surgery, more procedure done. It didn't help. They finally induced me into menopause. So they had to put me on a hormone blocker, Lupron, that basically shut down all the hormone production in my body. So I went into menopause for a year when I was 30. So I was having hot flashes. I was so confused about my body that I thought I actually turned into a lesbian because I started to lose attraction to men. And then there were just events in my life where I just questioned everything about myself. So it was just a very hard time for me and having to go through residency training as well. And so finally I looked into it and it was actually a patient I diagnosed with cancer who asked me, Dr. True, what do I eat? What should my diet be? And in that moment, I was like, well, I know you shouldn't eat sugar. And like just from my own reading, I was like, okay, you shouldn't have sugar and you should be more plant-based. But the way I answered the patient, I was like, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just kind of like racking my brain. And I was like, I should know more about this. And I looked back and I was like, I literally had maybe 5 hours of nutrition in my medical training. And then I was like, I need to know more. So because of that patient, I really start looking at, okay, what do I need to do for nutrition? How do I support these patients that have cancer diagnosis? And then I learned about functional nutrition. And I was like, whoa. And then I learned about functional medicine. I was like, whoa. And at that time, I was already very resigned about family medicine because I started to see I put all of my whole life into becoming a doctor. I wanted to become a doctor since I was like 11. And then when I got there, they gave me guidelines and then they gave me these medications and they say like you can only operate from this guideline for different conditions. And I was like, well, why did I go to school for? How can I not use my own judgment to make personalized plans for my patient, but I know my patient would not do well on certain medication because of their history. And so that was already there for me. And I actually was going to quit medicine and go back and go to law school because at that point, I need to be something like much higher than a doctor for my parents to be okay with me switching career after they spent like their whole life supporting me to become a doctor. So, but because I found functional medicine, which is really root cause medicine, you look at why the person is sick. You're not just looking at symptoms and then covering it up with a medication or a surgery. And then I saw that foundationally, you need to look at what are they eating? What kind of toxicity are they exposed to? What kind of hidden infection are they dealing with? And then really that pulls it all together for me. And I was like, this is the medicine that I wanted to practice. So then I discovered I actually wanted to be a healer, but I thought a healer is a doctor, at 11. So I was like, oh, so I just go to medical school, but it works out because, with the medical degree, I'm able to now really heal people from a perspective of modern medicine and incorporate like ancient traditions from traditional Chinese medicine and other modalities, because that's what functional medicine is. It just integrate all of the wisdom and proven methodology and modalities from like different cultures and from the past so that we can treat at the root cause. And I specifically love using food as medicine, love and connection and really healing you as a person from the inside out. And then really focusing on your gut because that's the gateway to your health. So when I discovered that, I started like pretty much studying functional medicine on the side. And then I would do personalized nutrition plan for my patients. I actually got in trouble for recommending or spending too much time with patients. And then so I was like, okay, I know this is not the space for me to do it. I couldn't help myself. But pretty much once I got done with my training, I was like, I'm practicing functional medicine, even though I had no experience. No one knows who I am. And then when I met Mary, I always knew because I've already been working with a lot of uh perimenopausal women and menopausal women in the past basically 8 years of my practice. And so I already know, how to get them better and treat the root cause, but I didn't really know how to help women in the mass. Like I'm just seeing like one person at a time, and being in functional medicine, you really can't see a lot of patients. So I have a very small practice and I see mostly just about 6 patients a day. So I can't really serve that many people. And so when Mary and I met, and she came on to really help me like look at, well, how can I grow the practice? How can I serve more people? And then we're like, well, let's do a program. And that's pretty much, and with her, what she's gone through and her story, we're like, yeah, we would be the perfect partners for each other because with my clinical background and with what she's able to do with her experience. And then I just happen to know what what menopause feels like for a year. So that's how we're like, okay, this is what we're gonna put together. And that's how we got SheSHIFTS.
Wow. Well, I've never heard of functional medicine before, and I bet a lot of our audience. What is it basically, and why is it different?
So functional medicine, just think of like we're looking at function, right? So conventional medicine, amazing in treating acute conditions. So if you need a surgery, you break an arm, I would go to traditional conventional medicine, right? But if you're looking at chronic diseases, diabetes, high blood pressure, menopause, perimenopause, you know what? You actually don't have a lot of, normally you wouldn't have a lot of symptoms in perimenopause and menopause, but if you have underlying hidden infection, toxicity, so you're looking at function and what is disrupting the way your body is working, that's what functional medicine look at, is which biological systems do you have that are not working. And so the way it works is that you got to look at root causes. And then the labs that we use in traditional medicine, we typically only look at, are they abnormal enough to where you have a diagnosis? So it's all inside of like looking for the diagnosis, labeling your condition. Functional medicine doesn't really care about labeling the condition. It really looks at what is not working. Is your detox system not working? Is your gut not working? And the gut is digestive. It's also it also regulate your hormone, and it also eliminate waste from the body. So if you don't look at the body for their function and looking at what's not working, you're pretty much just treating blindly in a way, right? You're just treating the symptoms, which is just on the surface. So when you get to the root, if you treat the root, which is usually gut, right? Gut hormones, gut, and then liver dysfunction, gallbladder dysfunction, and then hormone imbalances. But hormone imbalances really originate from the gut being inflamed. It typically, I would say 90% of all the conditions we deal with can originate from the gut. So if you're going to treat anything, like any symptoms you have to start with the gut for you to really get to the root of it and treat it once and for all. Versus if you just treat symptoms, the moment you get off of the medication, you're pretty much going to go back on to having symptoms again.
Well, thank you. That really helps because that's a new term. And so,
Mm-hmm.
Dr. True, you focus on root cause resolution rather than symptom management, as you just described. So like a woman, let's just talk about sort of like what happened with Mary. She kind of got dismissed. Hey, that's the way it is. Live with it. That's just what you got to do. Let's say that there's a woman that's listening who's been dismissed or misdiagnosed for years. How can you unpack this so she can feel some hope? And could you help her?
Mm-hmm. I would say my framework when I look at any case is I'm going to look at three main domains. There's one is like, and these domains are inside of lifestyle and environmental factors because genetically, so historically, we blame a lot of chronic diseases on genes. And you're just born with the genes that you have, but that's been disproven with the Human Genome Project. Our genes don't cause diseases. It's the environment that interface with your genes. So the environment meaning stress, right? You got to look at stress. Now, stress in itself can cause diseases because it dysregulates all the hormones. Once you're too stressed out, your body go into what we call a burnout state. And most women, because we have so many roles in life and we grow up being high achievers and we take care of our kids, we take care of our family, and then into our 40s and 50s, we start taking care of our parents. So all of that burden actually are huge stressors on the body, but we don't really know how to deal with the stress and help our body recover from stress. And stress can come in physical form, so meaning like falls, like accidents, right? There's a physical stressor on our body. You can get stress from mental, like overworking, over worrying about things, and challenges in life, and then emotional. Emotional can come from relationships, and the women I work with is going to be mainly their spouse, the children, what their children are going through and what their parents are going through. And then obviously siblings and friendships, all of those things. And then there is biochemical stress. So if you're dealing with hidden infections that are, and when I say hidden infection that is in your system, but you don't know about it. You don't have the fever. You don't have the cold. You don't have the pain. You don't know that there are hidden infections inside you, but they manifest as brain fog. They can manifest as low energy. They can manifest as depression, anxiety. So when you have hidden infection, it's a source of biochemical stress. And then there's stressors from EMFs, right? And there's stress from not sleeping enough. Now, those are the things I assess for under stress. And then there are deficiencies. Deficiencies is when you're looking at hormone deficiencies. We look at thyroid, adrenals, and sex hormones. They all have different function. The unfortunate thing in my training in medicine was that we were actually not taught to fully assess hormones. We mainly were taught to look at production. But hormones, once you produce hormones, those hormones need to be transported to all the tissue. For instance, estrogen and testosterone are produced in our ovaries, right? Actually, estrogen and progesterone, and then testosterone is in our adrenals. Well, once they're produced, there is sex hormone binding globulin that then carry those sex hormones to all the organs and then release them, and then they bind to the tissue. Well, if you don't assess for sex hormone binding globulin, and if you don't assess for now, once the hormones get to the tissue, they're used and they're broken down. So how are they broken down? Because when you have too much excess waste estrogen, that your liver can't break down, and then your gut have to eliminate those metabolites, then now you can have these metabolites that sometimes are a lot more harmful than just having estrogen in your system. So when you assess hormone, you got to assess how they're produced, how they're transported, how they're broken down, and then lastly, how are they bind to the cells? Because if the cells, which have receptors on them, which is like a protein that sticks out and then estrogen binds to it, and then it sends a signal into the cell. If the receptor doesn't bind to the hormone properly, then the signaling to that cell doesn't happen. And that's what we call hormone resistance. You hear this in insulin resistance. So if you have insulin resistance, you can have thyroid hormone resistance. You can have sex hormone resistance. So that's what you need to do when you assess hormones. And that's what a lot of conventional medicine just didn't give us the training for. And you kind of have to go into deeper into functional medicine to really get to learn all of these cool stuff about hormones. And then there's nutrition, there is sleep, there's movement and exercise. So, I stress movement a lot because we spend 93% on average, Americans spend 93% indoors. Pretty much most of our lives are spent indoors. So we're really missing the exposure to sunlight, the exposure to nature. And then we don't move. We sit 8 hours a day at a time. And now most of us are on the computer screen getting exposure to all of these EMFs as well. So now these deficiencies, they start to manifest as dysfunction. And then movement is really important because there's circulation, right? But there's also the fascia system, which holds everything together in our body. And this system is really like highly intelligent. But when you're sitting too much, these fascia system, they get locked and they dry up. And then your tissue, they don't move the same anymore. And they don't send the right communication to your body. So I focus a lot on movement and exercise. And then there is oxygen. Now, a lot of women, as we get older, especially in our 40s and 50s, and when we gain a little weight, it's not so much as sleep apnea, it's not that severe, but it's just mild obstruction in our airways when we go to sleep and we don't get enough oxygen. And then we wake up groggy, even if we get 7 or 8 hours of sleep. So women who do sleep, but they wake up not refreshed, I assess for their oxygen as well. And then the last thing and the most important thing I look at is going to be your toxic burden. Think of your toxic burden as like a bucket, and your body is a bucket, and these toxins get filled up over the years. From the moment we were conceived in our mother's womb, whatever our mother was dealing with, it's being passed down to us because we're using her blood supply, right? So if she's dealing with toxicity, and there's actually research that showed the toxins and deficiencies, stress, trauma can be passed down up to 4 generations. So whatever our ancestors are dealing with, we're living it too. So understanding that will allow you to have access to really truly healing yourself, right? But inside of the toxic burden, it accumulates over the years. So as we get older, we attribute a lot of our aging and our diseases to like just getting older, but it's not. Aging is actually a disease, or accelerated aging is a disease. And we get older and age faster when we have hidden infection. So hidden infection can come from bacteria, which our gut has over 100 trillion bacteria. That's why you hear the gut microbiome is very important. And then we have viruses. Now, viruses, we have accumulated hundreds of viruses throughout our lifetime. Every single viral infection that you've ever had is only suppressed by our immune system. And then as we get older, our immune system get weaker because our toxic burden is getting higher. Then these viruses can actually come out of dormancy, and then they can reinfect us. And sometimes they don't truly get reactivated, but their viral load get high enough to where it keeps your immune system busy. And when your immune system is busy for a period of time, it will get burned out because not everything requires energy. Everything requires nourishment and nutrients. That's why it's all connected. It's not just one thing you're looking at. And then there's bacteria, viruses, fungus. Fungus is huge. Mold in our food. pretty much any school that you go through when you're young, it's like old and they have mold, you would never know. But only 25% of the population actually get affected by mold toxicity. And then the last thing I really look at is parasites within hidden infection. And parasites is huge. If you're really sick and your symptoms are pretty severe, I can almost guarantee you with 99% of the time it's a parasitic infection with some kind of bacteria and viral thing going on as well. Now that's just hidden infection. And then there is toxicity from all the preservatives and toxins that they put into our food, the way our food is grown, all the pesticide and insecticides that are sprayed on our food. I'm not going to go in there because I can talk about this for like hours because like I have
Well,
gone
you certainly
deep.
know your details, and of course they're all critical. And so it's nice to know for sure that you have a comprehensive analysis, that you have taken the time to really identify the different components and variables that can happen when a traditional doctor might just say, deal with it. So let's go
Yeah.
into some of the certifications you've got, Mary, in hormone, menopause coaching, and you've worked for high-performing women, for years now. What are the silent and commonly overlooked struggles most professional women carry into midlife?
Well, I think that most professional, executive, high-powered women, as Dr. True said, are not only dealing with the stresses of their careers, but also the stresses from their families, the stresses from their health, whatever they might be dealing with and not really knowing exactly what the underlying causes are, dealing with aging parents, dealing with children. There's just so many things that women in midlife are dealing with that's so significantly different, really, than men. And then in addition to that, we just don't have conversations in most organizations about supporting women in midlife. It's unfortunate and it's starting to change. You can see some of the celebrities starting to talk about it now, so it's out there a little bit more. But there really has not been, not only has there not been any support within organizations for women struggling in midlife, but there just simply hasn't been any conversation about it. Women feel uncomfortable talking about the struggles that they're having at work. They might go to HR to say, "Hey, I'm pregnant and I'm going to need some time off or I'm going to need some support when I have this baby." But rarely do we say, "I'm in perimenopause and menopause and I'm struggling. I'm having trouble sleeping, so I'm coming to work really fatigued and tired. My memory is not what it used to be because I'm not getting sleep and my hormones are." We just don't have those conversations.
Well,
And
I grew up at the same, when I first entered the workforce, and I'm pretty much your target client. Um,
uh-huh.
I remember watching that perfume commercial that said that we can bring home the bacon, fry it up in a pan, and do anything to make our man satisfied. So
Right.
to admit at the same human being, now we have to go in and admit to a man, probably in HR, that we're having some issues, who they're not going to be empathetic. They're just going to, at least most people feel that way. Like, here's another woman coming in with a big sob story. So the other thing I want to say is longevity. Longevity is new to the human condition. I mean, prior to 50, 60 years ago, people didn't live this long.
That's right.
It's not only, the bias of the gender, it's also, we're dealing with a longevity that, we just don't have the wherewithal. And thank God we have Dr. True and doctors like her that are saying, hey, let's take a look at this. And I'm just talking pragmatically. Okay, let's talk about advanced hormone testing, Dr. True, to regenerative therapies. What is that all about? I heard about, you know, hormone testing and regenerative therapies. I can barely say it, but what is it?
Yeah, so I'll start with the hormone testing. So traditionally in conventional medicine, we use blood work, which provides some insight, but our hormones are so complex that if you just do one lab test, it only captures that moment of where your hormones are at. But I remember I said there's production and then breakdown and all of that. Well, if you really want to get an accurate or a more accurate assessment of your hormone, you want to do a urine test for hormone. And then there is a saliva test to test your cortisol, which is your stress hormone. And when you assess just sex hormone on its own, but you don't look at adrenals, you're not getting the full picture because pretty much there's another hormone called DHEA. Okay, DHEA comes from cholesterol, and so DHEA can convert to testosterone, progesterone, estrogen, estradiol mostly, and then cortisol. But there is a condition where when you're so stressed out, the cortisol will, they call it the cortisol steal syndrome, where it will steal all the resources because you're so stressed out that you will stop producing testosterone, estradiol, and progesterone in order for your body to keep producing cortisol, which is more important to the body when it thinks that you're under stress or in danger. That's why stress is so important for us to understand because stress will drive sex hormone dysfunction. And you mentioned longevity. Sexuality, our libido, and how much we get intimacy and have with our partner is actually that sixth vital to really see how uh how much vitality you have, and it can measure how long you can live. So basically the more sex you have, the happier you are and the longer you can live because of
Mm.
just like all the hormones that get produced during intimacy. So as a woman, one of the things we will talk, share with women in the program is how to have a very healthy sexual life, mainly because that is such a critical part that is so easy to integrate into our life, and it provides so much more benefit than all the other things that we do on a day-to-day basis. But with the testing, when you measure all the hormones, you can also measure what's in production. So that's the saliva, right? And then and when you break down all the hormones, you urinate it out. And so you measure the urine content of metabolites. So your body will look at how does your body or your liver break down all the hormones. And then in the metabolites, you can identify if you have higher risk of breast cancer, ovarian cancer, endometrial cancer, and in men, prostate cancer by just looking at the metabolites in their urine. And
Mm.
so it gives you a lot more of a comprehensive look at the person's hormone. And then with the cortisol, your cortisol will rise when you wake up in the morning, and then it drops within an hour, and then it drops throughout the day. That's the normal cortisol pattern. If you just check blood tests, it could be high, but you got to know when to take the blood test. It has to be within 30 minutes of waking up. You
Mm.
can't just wake up and go get a blood test in 30 minutes. So it's really not accurate. But if you have a home kit, you can wake up, test, 30 minutes later, you test. That will give me an idea of like how your cortisol respond in the morning. And this cortisol awakening response is so important because it measures your resilience, and your resilience is your ability to bounce back from stress. It bounce back from diseases. And most people, most women that I work with, there is a flat line, and that's burnout.
Mm.
And there are different stages of burnout that you can have by looking at cortisol levels. And so that's what I look at. And then for thyroid, which is another important hormone that women deal with that is so mistreated, it's not managed properly. It's because often conventional medicine only look at TSH, maybe T4, but TSH gets produced. It stimulates your thyroid to produce T4. T4 then go to the liver, the kidneys, the muscle, the brain, and then it get turned into T3, which is the active form of thyroid, and then it does its thing. However, we don't really measure T3 in conventional medicine. And then there's a reverse T3, which is when you have hidden infection, stress, your hormones, your T3 just get automatically converted into reverse T3. Now this reverse T3 is an inactive form, but it binds to the same receptor, and now it's competing with your T3. And so even if you have normal free T3, you can have abnormal symptoms. You don't feel relief because you may have very high reverse T3. And then there are antibody testing that I can go into, but I'm going to leave it at that because these are like important things that I truly believe women need to know about how hormones work so that they can advocate for themselves or at least find the right provider for them to assess the hormone properly.
I really, really appreciate that, Dr. True. I think what you're bringing up and the points that you're making are so critical. And even if it is the very first time we've heard some of this vocabulary, I want to become familiar with it because if it is as critical and we are going to live longer, we are living longer, we need to understand that vocabulary. And if today's the first day we've heard some of those terms, so be it. We need to, you know, figure out this longevity because people are living longer and there is no doubt. So let's go over to you again, Mary. The last third of life is a major theme in your mission. I think that's awesome because that's where I'm at again. What do you believe? What do you really believe? I love Dr. True. I think you guys are such a great team. You're definitely both so passionate. And I love the way that the science and then the coaching, what a great blend. So, what do you believe, Mary, that women need to hear today about aging, vitality, and really what's possible?
Well, you said something really that sparked a thought with regard to that when you were talking about the old commercial about I don't even remember the whole thing now.
Oh,
You can
like you
take it
could
home
bring
and
home the
fry it up in a pan.
bacon, fry it up in a
Right.
pan, and give
But the
it
whole
to your
idea was,
lady.
yeah, you can do it all. You can do everything. But what's interesting is the statistics now about women suffering with menopause in their careers are really quite sobering. We've been talking about these in our webinar, and it's amazing when you think that 20% of the workforce are women in menopause. And approximately 25% of those women, no, higher than that. I think it was 65% of the women say they struggle with menopause symptoms at work and that they impact their ability to do their jobs as effectively as they used to. But even more shocking is approximately 15% of women say they have quit their jobs because they couldn't manage menopause symptoms and their careers, and another 13% have been thinking about quitting their jobs. So these are women at the height of their careers who have expended years and years. I mean, I was one of them, 30 plus years in the legal profession. And all of a sudden, you're struggling to be able to do a job that you've done every day for years. And not only that, but the organizations they work for have expended a lot of money on those women as well, bringing them into their organizations, training them, bringing them up through the ranks, and all of a sudden they're struggling to be able to maintain that career. So what I want women to know is they can have it all. They just have to get the right support, the right help. And that's what we're doing in our SheSHIFTS program is we're really providing what's the word I'm looking for? We're providing a support system, if you will, for women who are struggling in their careers, struggling with menopause by having Dr. True do the diagnostic testing, really look at the root cause of what they're dealing with. And then we establish a personalized plan for them that involves nutrition and fitness and image and creating a community for these women to really be together, support each other. We provide all kinds of resources and have weekly calls and Q&As and really provide kind of a one-stop shop, if you will, to be able to help them manage their symptoms, get relief, get well, feel better, and be able to stay in their careers for as long as they want to, so that they really can have it all and manage their lives in the way that they want to manage them.
So do your clients have to live in Atlanta?
No, this is a virtual program, and we've designed it specifically for women to be able to do on their own time. We know these women are busy. They don't have time to come to in-person meetings once a week, meet with a coach, meet with the doctor, meet with another coach. This is all virtual. We have live Q&A calls that will also be recorded. We hope they will be able to get on live, but if they can't, they can listen to them when they have time. They can watch the modules for the course while they're on an airplane if they want to. We really are designing this recognizing that women are busy and it's all virtual and they can do it when they have time to do it.
So you have a integrated care under this one umbrella. How does that work? And can you explain to me, Dr. True, let's say I was a client and, I have my doctor here in Cadillac, Michigan, he's typically doesn't get me at all, but he is at least there. And I need him because, he gives me my blood pressure medicine and he gives me my statin and whatever. But how do you work together? How do I make it work with you and with him?
You want to have a primary care, but if you become a patient of mine, you usually only go to them for a wellness visit, like that once a year. You get your exam because I'm virtual, I don't do physical exams, so you want someone to do that. And then you do all your preventive medicine care with your primary care. But what I'm able to do for you is it depends on your goals. Most people who come to work with me is they want to get better and they want to get off of their medication. So typically I can get you off of your high blood pressure, off the statin, and any medications that you're on, antidepressants, anti-anxiety. I work
How
with
did you
you to
know? Does it show?
I just it's all through like just seeing so many women struggling with the same thing. And really my passion was I did see that we just use way too much medication. I mean, I believe medication has its place and a time for it, but no, there's no medication, not even herbs, not even supplements is meant for long term, right? So my philosophy and the way I practice is like I want to educate you. I really want to teach you everything that I've learned in medicine, but also translating it into everyday practical strategies that you can implement into your life. Because if you depend on me to get you better, you're not going to go very far. If you depend on anyone, my goal is to empower you with the knowledge and the strategies that you can go and manage your own health. I typically work with women for probably like between 6 months to 12 months. And after that, they know what to do. They know how to eat. They know how to sleep, move, take care of themselves. And when you get to that place, you really don't need a doctor. And that's my goal. I want you to be able to be your own healer. You can
Nice.
be, and really that's where the magic is. Because if you don't take care of yourself, I can give you all the advice you want, but you're not going to be able to get where you want. So I work with women based on what their goals are, but I also educate them to really let them know that whatever their goals are, maybe just on the surface, but through conversations, through education, you're going to learn that you are your own healer. And
Right.
that's what I
Love
want.
that.
Mhm.
I really, really love that. That's great. So, Mary, you include fitness coaching, image coaching. Does that mean like look and style?
So our image coach is a friend of mine that I met 20 some years ago. She's been an image consultant for years, but she also teaches women confidence. And so what I'm seeing with a lot of women our age who are struggling with menopause is we start to lose some of our confidence.
Mhm.
We don't feel like when we walk into a room because we're struggling with memory and brain fog and maybe put on a little more weight than we would like, we start to lose our confidence about how we feel about ourselves, how we look, how we present ourselves. And so Kelly is going to work with the women to really kind of help them get that back, help them feel confident in the way they dress, how they present themselves, how they walk into a room and kind of take up space and have presence and feel better about themselves. in the workplace.
That sounds like a very holistic, comprehensive approach. So why was it so important to blend medical science with lifestyle, mindset, and identity work? Why was it so important to just like bring that combination?
Well, I think the reason it's so important is because it's all of who we are. Dr. True can fix what's going on inside our bodies, but if we don't know how to exercise, if we don't know how to take care of our bodies, and it changes when we're in menopause. The way we used to exercise in our 20s and 30s is much different than we should be exercising in our 50s and 60s and beyond. And a lot of women don't know that. And they could be injuring themselves and actually making their health worse if they're not exercising properly. So it's all part of the big picture. And then having somebody, me, to coach you with your nutrition and help, eat the foods that you're going to need to eat for your hormones. We
So you
eat
don't
differently in our 50s and
like
60s than we did.
right. So it's
So
not
it's all part of
inflammatory.
the
Like
big
we were
picture.
talking inflammatory diets, that kind of thing.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. Our bodies function differently when we're in menopause than they did when we were younger, and we need to be making sure that we're feeding them with the right foods to address what's going on now.
Well, it sounds like if you need a guinea pig, you should sign me out to be your guinea pig because I
We'd be
think I
happy
need everything you've got.
to.
Okay, so Dr. True, your experience in the gut-brain hormone connection truly is incredible. What are the biggest myths women have about hormones, and what's really true?
Hmm. There's a few, but I think the one that I would really want to share with everyone is that, there have been some um, research studies on women and hormones that have really shaped the way we practice medicine, like doctors and my colleagues. Is that the studies in the 60s or 70s, they find that, when in the middle of the study, people were dying from heart attacks. And there was a study before the Women's Health Initiative that was finding that people were getting cancer. So they stopped that. And then they did another study and then they were dying of heart attacks. But the study was not a good study. They were using like women in their 70s and women that had a lot of health issues. And they were using hormones that were synthetic. And this is important to understand. It's like these studies were not done right, and the media took kind of blew it out of context too. And so a lot of doctors became very fearful of giving hormones because they don't want to cause harm. But that have caused a whole generation of women being mistreated in menopause and perimenopause. And so with hormones, there are risks and you got to know how to assess your risk. That's why these hormone testing helps. But ultimately, I would say hormones can help you if you know how to use it right. And a lot of time, there's so many here that I can talk about, but there's synthetic hormones and there's bioidentical hormones. Synthetic hormones, just think of them as mirror image. So it's like a left hand. They look very much the same, but they're not. They will bind to the receptor differently and they send slightly different message to the cell. And then that can cause the cell to dysfunction. So that's why you want to use bioidentical hormone. Now, within the world of bioidentical hormone, you're going to see a lot of pellet hormones, like hormone clinics. You got to find the right practitioner because these pellets, if you think about how they're given, right? The route of delivery of these hormones they matter. Because if you do a pellet, that's like a whole lot of hormones injected into your body all at once, right? And then they slowly get released too. That's too much for your body. We have a circadian rhythm. Women, we have a 28-day rhythm, and our hormones start out very low and then they rise through like after 14 days and we ovulate and then they drop and then they rise again. You have to mimic the natural circadian of your own hormones and your rhythm to be able to get the true effect of getting hormones. And then there's doctors who are still giving oral estrogen, which anything you take orally has to go through the gut and then has to go to the liver. And if the liver breaks down the estrogen, it is no longer the estrogen that you want. So really the patch, the cream is the best. I like the patch because it gives you systemic delivery cream. It's mostly used for like vaginal dryness and healing the atrophy. However, the cream can work too. It really, but it's messy. And then there is like if you use the cream, it can get on your partner, it can get on your pets, your children. Like you just don't want all that mess. And then you always have to balance out progesterone. Now, the conventional medicine say that you only give progesterone if the woman still has a uterus. That is not true. If you only give estrogen, and our hormones is that there's estrogen and progesterone, they rise and fall together. So if you're not giving progesterone with estrogen, you're not giving your body everything that it needs, and your estrogen will dominate all the function from estrogen, and you don't have progesterone, which is designed to balance out the effect of estrogen. And then there's testosterone. A lot of times you do testosterone injections. I would say you want to do a cream for women. Men, maybe. There's a lot more we can say about that, but that's the biggest thing I want to share with people as far as I don't know if they're myths, but the understanding about how to do hormone replacement therapy is very important for you to get the right kind of hormones and the right delivery, mode of delivery.
So do you do epidemiology? Is that where they gene therapy? Do you do any of that?
Epigenetics.
Yeah.
I use the principle. Yes, I can do testing in that, but a lot of what I've done and like my methodology is so precise now. It's just going to cost people more money. I can do it, and there are cases where everything we do doesn't work right. Usually, it'll come down to something is off with their genetics, and then I would run an epigenetic or a genetic genomic testing
Is
to help
that
them.
what regenerative therapy is?
Regenerative medicine or therapy, think of it as to help you get out of the degenerative state. So we, as a human body, as an organism, we can either be in degeneration or regeneration. So
Okay.
regenerative therapy is to take you out of degeneration and rebuild and rejuvenate. There's a lot out there with that. I don't know if we have time, but if we do, I can talk about it.
That's okay. I just know that that's really very important to, I mean, I think today we're educating me and our audience about some of this really critical medical I always say thank God for modern medicine. And I've said that because I own an electronic medical record company and I'm very familiar. I'm not a doctor, but I've worked with getting them online for 30 years. And it never ceases to amaze me how much medicine is truly a blessing and it's a gift from God, in my opinion. And I think just like anything in life, we have to continually learn about it. And we shouldn't take it for granted. You know, a personal, silly personal story. My son-in-law and my granddaughter have abscess teeth right now, and they're going to the doctor and the dentist and getting it taken care of and being a little lazy about taking their medicine and thinking it's all too expensive because it's the copay and all that. And I'm like, hey, it wasn't but 50, there were, you've heard of the Warner Brothers that
Mhm.
have the movie set and the movie people, the movie guys from back in the day, where there were three. And one
Mhm.
died from a tooth abscess. And that wasn't that
Mhm.
long ago. That was in the night, that wasn't that long ago. I mean, it was a long time for, it's not like yesterday, but we can't take modern medicine for granted, and we have to continually learn. So I really appreciate what you're talking about today. So keep it coming. So many women are exhausted, inflamed, foggy, overwhelmed, but feel like they just have to deal with it. So we've gone through this. We've talked about it today. So what some women could be watching this and think, "Oh, it's so overwhelming." It's I'm even more overwhelmed now because there's so many opportunities. You've listed out so many wonderful opportunities that we could look at, our guts, our hormones, the stress in our life, but that could feel a little overwhelming. What could every woman do, like walking away from this podcast? What would you suggest if they feel like, hey, I feel like I want to participate, but I'm a little overwhelmed. I'm not quite sure. What would you say to a woman feeling that way?
I would say it's okay. It's okay to be overwhelmed. We are so bombarded with so much information, and then what we're sharing here is a lot of new information. And it's information that that I know women are looking for. It resonates with them. However, you can sit with it and really just listen to your intuition, right? We as women have so much intuition, but we let our intuition dissipate because we let a lot of external signals interfere with our autonomy, with what we need to do for ourselves. I would say sit with it and just observe yourself. So this is a practice that I do. I just observe myself making the judgment and validating them. I was like, it's so totally valid that it can be overwhelming because this is not your field, this is not your world, right? And once you can get to the place where you're like, okay, this is good information. I think this is something that I want to explore. Like for me, I offer a 15-20 minute call, like discovery call with people because I believe that I want to know who they are and I want them to know who I am before they work with me, right? Because I know the field that I'm in, it's very hard to like share all of this information. And so when I speak to them, I can speak to their case. I can hear what their concerns are, and then I can address them and share with them what I would do, and
Right.
then how I would take care of them. So I think just having conversations about it. And here's the thing, if it's overwhelming, ask questions, and start having more conversations around this so you're more familiar. And there are so many podcasts, and I learned a lot from YouTube University. So I would
Well,
look
and the
and then,
other thing that I think is amazing that you have is the calls, the group
hmm
calls, because I think that as women we love to talk it out. And if you give people an opportunity to jump on a call, list out their questions and that,
hmm
and I do believe that just like any new innovation, you'll have early adopters. So if you are an early adopter, you see yourself as someone maybe that's having some of these symptoms and you aren't ready to hang it up. I'm certainly not. And you want to, hey, you're smart. You can handle this. And this is giving you a lifeline to solve that riddle. And I think that what Mary and Dr. True are bringing to the table is an option to do that. And
Can I
so,
just add, can I just add one more thing, Rose?
absolutely.
If women are listening and they're thinking, this really sounds interesting, and it's a lot of things I didn't know before, but I'm interested in learning more, we are having a free webinar to introduce people to our program. We have 8 more webinars. The next one is on December 11th, and the link for the webinars is going to be in your show notes. And that's a perfect time for people to just come and listen some more, listen to what the program is about. Dr. True again talks about how she gets to the root cause of what women are struggling with. And then they can decide for themselves if that's something that they'd like to embark in and be part of. But finding out more about it is free. So
Awesome.
they're
And
welcome
will
to
you
come
be
check it out.
wonderful? And will you record it so if they can't make the live, will it be out there on the internet so they can
Yes,
watch it
yes,
later?
absolutely. Yep.
Fantastic. Well, before I wrap it up, do you guys have any last words that you'd like to share with the audience before we do our conclusion?
I just want to say thank you, Rose, for this opportunity. I'm just so grateful, blessed to be able to partner with Mary to do something that I'm passionate about. And you can tell I can go on and on about
I
all these
love
things.
it.
So it's just like I'm just present to how I'm experienced myself having this conversation with someone like you, and then having a list like a people that are listening, and I know that this would make a difference for them. Like, thank you for that opportunity for
You're
me to share.
welcome. My
Yes.
pleasure. My pleasure. I really believe in you and what you guys are doing. And so, what an incredible conversation. Thank you, Dr. True and Mary. You guys are truly leading a health revolution for women, not with trends, not with a quick fix, but with science, diagnosis, compassion, and a holistic approach that actually works. If today's episode sparked something inside you, if you're tired of bouncing between providers, if you want to thrive, not just deal with midlife, then go check out the SheSHIFTS webinar and program. Like Mary said, we'll put it in the show notes below this video. Or if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, it will be in the description. This is concierge level care. And who doesn't like that white glove concierge care? It's specifically designed for women who are ready to take back their energy, clarity, and confidence. SheShifts webinar link will be in the show notes as well as the sales page. So if you're curious about that, you can click on that link. And of course, explore the amazing work happening at Conscious Medicine, where Dr. True and her team are transforming what healthcare can look like for women. A huge thank you to Mary and Dr. True for pouring into us today. I truly feel like I've gotten poured knowledge and love into me. And to our listeners, stay bold, stay curious, and keep charging forward towards your best life. And if you've heard something you think a friend of yours might find valuable, make sure you share, like, and subscribe to Bullish on Business. Until next time, we'll see you later. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Rose.